at the home of everything Frederick on Market Street with Dr. Rachel Mandel. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you because we're in the same Rotary,
We are.
Key City Rotary. Today we are talking about
Trauma Responsive Frederick.
Trauma Responsive Frederick. Okay.
Right.
Tell me when this was established and why.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, Inga, who is the executive director of Hartley House, Inga James, was kind of looking out into the community, and of course, being the executive director of Hartley House, she's very tuned into trauma in the community.
Right.
And looked at what was coming with the pandemic, and she said, there's going to be more trauma. So she started thinking about what we needed to do as a community to try and mitigate that trauma, prevent that trauma, and then how to better be able to respond to people with trauma. So there's actually a set of principles, a model called Trauma-Informed Practices. She started this collaborative back then at the beginning of the pandemic called Trauma Responsive Frederick. And the goal of the organization, which at that time was just a collaborative.
It wasn't even
a 501c3.
just an idea, really.
It was just an idea with a lot of passionate people.
Sure.
Just became a 501c3 this past December. But started talking to people about these concepts around how you interact with others who may have been traumatized, who have trauma in their history. What does that mean? How does that come out in somebody and their behavior? How do we help them be more resilient? How do we help them on their path of healing, understanding that everybody probably has something in their history, right? Everybody's got some kind of trauma. We've spent some time in this community talking about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and there are like 10 questions in a survey that you can ask yourself, did any of these things happen to me? And one of them is, are your parents divorced? Well, how many people does that apply to?
Yeah.
Right?
Or a lot.
Or are you, have you ever been exposed to verbal abuse or physical abuse? Anybody in your family with substance use disorders? Anybody in your family incarcerated? And all of
My
those
goodness,
things. Yeah, it touches a lot of people.
Yeah, I would say.
So when you think about kids being exposed to a lot of these traumas under normal circumstances, right? And then you see the pandemic coming, and you know that on the level that we all experienced that, which was, by the way, a collective trauma.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay? People lost jobs. People lost family members. People lost homes. So you add all of those onto what's already the baseline, and you can understand why Dr. James felt like we really needed to address these issues.
It's very perceptive of her.
Right, and really think about it. So the group started talking about, how do we do that? And so the group's purpose is to educate, to advocate, and then to network or to bring people together for communication. Because there are actually a lot of services in Frederick County, but sometimes we don't know what other people are doing.
Right.
So the group meets once a month, and we have a collaboration corner as part of that every month, where somebody's presenting what they do. And I can't tell you how many times somebody else will say, I didn't know you did that.
Right.
I didn't know that service was available in Frederick County.
Yes.
So that's kind of one of the key things that we do.
Very interesting.
But really it's the education in the community and having them kind of change the mental model from, and that's why I brought the book along, from looking at somebody who's struggling with a behavioral health issue or problem, and instead of thinking to yourself or saying even, what's wrong with you, okay, which is pretty negative. What's wrong with you? To shift that to what happened to you.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so when you go into an interaction, understanding that everybody has something, and then people have triggers, and you don't want to re-traumatize somebody, and you're thinking about why are they behaving this way? What is there in their background that they went through, that they're made decisions or they're doing certain things that put them in this moment in this time? What happened to them?
Yeah.
Okay, and it makes you more empathetic. It makes it easier to kind of assist them on their road to recovery. It makes you and them more resilient.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get people to kind of shift their thinking.
That's great small change you can
Small
make.
change,
yes.
right. So it comes out of this book.
Yeah.
This is by Bruce Perry, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
And the name of the book is What Happened to You. It is incredibly readable. over the last couple of years, what the group has been doing is going into the community, talking to whatever groups want to talk to us about it. We do presentations, then we talk to them about trauma. What is trauma? What does it look like? What do people look like who are traumatized? And then we kind of customize it a little bit for them. So for example, we spoke to the chaplain's residency program at the hospital. So we talked about their role with their people, and then how they would come across something like that and what they could do to respond appropriately. We talked to the sheriffs, the supervisors at the sheriff's office. We've talked to faith-based organizations. We've talked to Rotary clubs.
Yeah.
So they're all different organizations that we have talked to, where we've kind of given them the general conversation and general information, talked about what it means to be trauma-informed, and then given them a little bit of extra for them that's kind of customized. We've actually put together a 1-hour training for the Frederick City Police Department's mobile crisis response team.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So that they can train their officers, and they want to actually use it for their academy as well.
Yeah.
Because it talks about in their job, what does it mean to experience trauma through somebody else? And that's called vicarious trauma.
Okay.
People on the front line who are dealing every day with people who have traumatic experiences and who are, acting out or behaving in a certain way because of that. You eventually take that stuff home with you.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do they recognize that, and how do they deal with that? Besides, the difficult jobs that they do.
That's really interesting as well. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we put together that training for them. We've done a workshop with businesses. We did a training with workforce development. We're actually going to be talking to the behavioral health department at the hospital coming up this week. We're doing a presentation for the community stakeholders, health stakeholders through the Healthcare Coalition also this week. So really it's just getting that information out so that people hear it and they become familiar with it, and then they think about it.
Right.
And sometimes even the smallest of changes, make the most difference. If I have a moment, can I tell a story?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we went and presented to Veterans Group,
the
Veterans Advisory Group, actually the engagement veterans here in the community, and it was a virtual and an in-person meeting, and I went through the presentation with them. And we talked about this shift from what's wrong with you to what happened to you, and one of the vets who was on virtually afterwards at the end started to tell us kind of his story a little bit, and he says that when he gets up in the morning, he has a little sticky note that he puts on his computer that says what's wrong with you, and he says, and he puts it there because he knows, he didn't really know how to think about it, but he knows that when he goes through his day, that he needs to be aware that that he needs to pay attention to how he's responding or how he's behaving, when he interacts with people.
That was bringing it to the forefront for him.
Right, so he would just keep reminding himself that he needed to kind of be careful.
Right.
What he said to people, how he reacted and things like that. So he said at the end, he goes, I'm going to take that sticky note off, he says, and I'm going to change it to what happened to you.
Oh.
So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't
That's
do
okay.
that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is, it's kind of like that meme that goes around that you don't know what everyone is battling, right? Everyone has something.
Right.
And as a people, we're kind of self-centered. We're in our own space a lot of times. I think that question as well just makes you start to look outward a little bit and how you're impacting in a positive and or negative way somebody else just based on sometimes what you say. And I think it's really a really interesting, again, small change you can make. So when you say to somebody though, what happened to you, what if somebody starts to tell you? Like what what are we supposed to do?
See, but you don't actually ask that question necessarily.
Okay.
You think it in your head.
And then whatever comes out.
And it kind of changes how you approach an issue or how you approach a problem.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So you're just cognizant then to understand that instead of automatically going to what's wrong with you, you're thinking in your head what happened to you, which will just change your whole demeanor and maybe open yourself up to just being more caring, empathetic.
Exactly.
Using empathy rather than defensiveness or whatever it is you're dealing with.
Come and talk to us and kind of go through some of these ideas. People are incredibly receptive to the idea They
I
like
would
it.
think so, because again, having all of us experienced one of those general things that you've mentioned. Well,
Right.
first of all, the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
We all went through that in some way, shape, or form. If you had to give somebody 2 things they could do today, it's like 2 tips on ways to kind of just be more empathetic to someone else.
Sure. What I would recommend first is they think about themselves.
Okay.
Okay. So they think about their own background and why there's certain things that they do, certain decisions that they make, how potentially it could be related to things that have happened to them in the past, so that this concept makes more sense to them.
Gotcha.
And then for the people that are around them and the things, people they interact with, especially with somebody that they may have a difficult relationship with, think about what they've been through and how those experiences might impact the decisions that they make and the way that they behave, so that you can be more empathetic to them.
So walk a mile.
That's right. Walk a
Walk
mile.
a mile.
Yeah.
Gotcha. How can Frederick become involved or help or support what you're doing?
Understanding the concepts. If there's any organization or group that wants us to come and talk to them, they just have to go to the website and contact us. We'd be more than happy to work something out. This sounds really kind of trite, but donate.
Yeah.
Because even though pretty much everybody who's involved as a volunteer, there's still overhead. The goal is to make Frederick a trauma-informed community, which makes us more resilient. The goal is to do what we call training and technical assistance with businesses and government and organizations, where the organizations take a look internally and make sure that their practices and their policies are trauma-informed. So in addition to doing the education in the community with lay people and different groups, we really want it to go, across the whole scope of what
Yeah.
Frederick County is. And so if there's an organization,
Yeah.
a business that wants us to walk them through that process, so it's a little more engaged, obviously, than just doing an education,
Sure.
to the technical assistance with their policies, their procedures, their environment, safety-wise. Unfortunately, there are a lot of systems that can re-traumatize people unintentionally. We would be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so people can go to traumaresponsivefrederick.org.
Correct.
And reach out through the contact us form. Look, this is really important information to know that you guys are out there and exist.
Yeah.
Businesses, organizations,
Right.
the corporate
Nonprofits,
side, nonprofit, for presentations or to help
Right.
with your day-to-day. We thank you so much.
My
I think this
pleasure.
is so interesting. And again, a small shift of what you're doing each day can positively impact hundreds and hundreds of people.
Without a doubt.
So let's do it. Let's be positive, Frederick. Let's change our way of thinking. We appreciate you so much, Dr. Mandel, and
thank
what you're
you.
doing. And I think it's really important for our community to remain strong no matter what happens.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.